Likely, correct. Yes.
Hi, Dee. It's going to take me a little, but just to have all the awareness.
There.
No worries, I just, so that easy to
He'll
remember.
come
Just
along.
behind your feet.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Yes.
Are we recording?
Yes.
All right. I'll call the work session to order, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Councilmember Hagenow.
Present.
Councilmember Kerr.
Here.
Councilmember Parmet. Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Thisted. Present. Mayor Riley.
Present.
There are 5 members present.
Thank you. First item is public comment for any item that's on our agenda. We're going to do things a little differently. I attended a Colorado Municipal League Mayor Summit this last week. And one of the recommendations that came out of that is we need to be very careful with the public comment period, making sure we're providing equal time to everybody. So, and the recommendation was we need to be timing the public comment and then work with that person if they're running over to get them to wrap up. Or as some municipalities do, they just do a hard, your time's up and go on. So I've asked our clerk to, she's going to turn her laptop around with the timer, and there will be a ding that will occur, and that will just be a reminder that the 3 minutes is up. And this is predominantly just to preclude any potential legal issues that may happen in the future. I'll also say something similar to this at the council meeting this evening, since we'll have a public comment period there as well, so everyone is aware of this change. I don't think it's going to have any major impact on the public comment. Comment has been normally very concise, so I don't think it's a big issue, but it protects the town. Our town attorney is remote today. She had a thing with her husband tomorrow morning, so she asked if it was possible for her to attend this meeting remotely, and the town manager and I concurred with that, so we'll see how it goes. And the next item is actually the public comment period. At this point, we encourage anyone from the public who would like to make a comment about any item on today's work session agenda to please come forward and speak. Is there anyone here who'd like to? Anyone online? All right. And I assume no one has raised their hand online?
No.
Given that the public comment period is closed, at this point we'll turn to the town financials, and I'll turn to our town manager.
And this will be the last time you turn to me to do town financials. We have our financial director, Heike Fox,
There is
at the desk today. What?
Sorry, there is somebody who just raised their hand for public comment. Is it closed?
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Okay, this is Paula Paul from Tennis Townhomes. I just wanted a simple comment. In the write-up on the STRs, they spoke about that Airbnb had been incorrectly collecting county accommodation tax, and VRBO was doing the same. So I think that they sometimes collect the extra 2%, whether it goes to some county or sometimes in the past, even the town of Dillon, they've caught. But anyway, that's my comment, that it's not just Airbnb, it's also VRBO.
And I think our town finance director is actually going to mention that this afternoon. But again, thank you very much for your comment. And she's also going to address how that whole issue. So with that, No other comment? And let's go back to our town manager.
Okay, so I will, this is our financials as of December 31st. They are far from our final year-end financials, so we still have to process incoming bills where the expenditure was from the year before and just various adjustments. And show our last taxes. Our November tax was up above what we were expected. I actually anticipate that December, because of where the holiday fell, might be a little down, but that would make January a little up. We'll see how that all shakes out. In general, our taxes are a little above what we were expected to bring in for the year. We have lots of money to the positive on our expenditures. Well, actually, I'll go through our other tax revenues. We've been in contact with the state. Now we'll have to fight it out with the county over highway users tax funds. The state sent us an email claiming that they were not our monies yet, given the way they dispersed the funds. So we'll see how that shakes out. The nicotine tax, I am not sure why we haven't received that. We should be receiving it this month. The IGA was approved by all the towns last year, so last December. But that might be the delay in that tax money coming in. Specific ownership and auto ownership tax, I have a feeling, and Heike and I are going to go over all of these after she gets our lodging tax put together and figure out how to fight with the county over what they owe us on these funds. But we expect some of them are. I'm not exactly sure how the specific ownership tax will shake out. That might be considered a property tax, which we don't have. I'll have to see how that shakes out.
It's not.
Okay, good.
There's a specific formula laid out by the state for how it's collected.
Okay, good. But Heike and I are going to jump on that as soon as we get the lodging tax collection up and rolling. As I've explained before, building permit fees, given the way they were collected, are way below what's expected, but that's more than offset in savings and expenditures later to the building department for their inspection services. Short-term rental licenses are really close to being on. I know we're still processing a few late payments, so we expect that number to be just about accurate when it's all said and done. Grants were fine. We just filed now for our third quarter grant for my pay, so that will bring that money up to budget date. And we're going to start filing this quarter for our comp plan grant money. We've applied for a couple other grants I'll explain later in the manager's report. Everything else as we get to our employee benefits and costs, we're below budget on all of those monies. February started and it took time to hire employees in lots of positions. Our general expenditures are pretty much where they should be. Some are a little high, some are a little low, but nothing more than, I think, $5,500 is the greatest differential in that, and that's for professional services membership fees. Town attorney costs, as I mentioned numerous times, well worth the extra money spent. Everything else, our expenditures are generally below budget. Road maintenance, there was no money budgeted for taking over the road maintenance for the county roads, so that's why we have differentials in expenditures there. It wasn't all that much in the first couple months of the year. Engineering services, we've jumped on. We had to repair the bridge at cement cost there, the East Keystone Bridge. We had to get that engineered, unexpected cost. Capital improvements, a lot of expenditures from the capital funds were not made this year due to weather, due to timing and issues. A lot of those expenditures carried over into next year's budget, and we'll be spending those to get roads fixed, roads designed, pathways designed. We're in good shape though. Workforce housing revenue will catch back up. As I've said, they're still way behind on their accounting at the Summit County Housing Authority. They expect to be caught up this month. Unexpected death in the accounting department. So that money though should be right about where budgeted. Other than that, we're looking pretty good at the end of the year, and next month or maybe 2 months from now, we'll see the final end of year budget for 2024. Any questions?
Questions? All right. Next item is Thayer Hurst from the Summit Economic Partnership. And there, we've been listening to you in other forums, and we welcome you to the council meeting.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Let me just get set up here. I have a presentation, so just give me a moment here. You guys see that well?
Yeah, hang on one
There, sorry.
What do you think with the people in the meeting will be useful?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we're good to go. Hey, well, thank you guys for having me here. I think the next hour and a half will be entertaining. Just kidding. I will try to keep this to 10 to 15 minutes. My name is Thayer Hirsch. I'm the CEO of the Summit Economic Partnership. Just a little preview of this presentation. I kind of have in two parts really. One is kind of an overview of economic development in general, what SEP has done for the county, and then more specifically pertaining to what we've been working on with Keystone, with the RTAP grant. If you guys want me to skip the whole front end, let me know, just raise your hand or give me some, like, wrap it up here. But I think it is important to see kind of like our overall objectives from us. So quick overview of what economic development is. Specifically for Summit County, our focus is on economic diversification. 63% of our jobs here in the county are tied to tourism. That's a heavy reliance on one industry. One of the examples I like to give is Denver in the early 80s was heavily reliant on the oil and gas industry. When that kind of bust in the early 80s happened, the state of Colorado, the city of Denver looked at, hey, what can we do to stop with this boom and bust of oil and gas? And so they went out and created a couple of statewide organizations, the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, Department of Local Affairs, or just a couple of them. And they recruited aerospace companies, telecom companies, healthcare companies. You see that kind of dominant on the Front Range. Never mind like boosting our education at CU, CSU, a lot of those schools to help kind of train the people for these jobs. What you see now is oil and gas is a very small percentage of Colorado's overall economy, and when we do hit a bust, it's just kind of a blip on the radar. Tourism has been very, very good to Summit County, and we haven't had a recession in a while, but the tourism industry in general is susceptible to recessions. We're seeing a change in climate that is going to possibly affect the tourism industry. We're trying to help the county prepare for this. So kind of three ideas: economic diversification, workforce development, so making sure our locals are ready for those jobs, and then entrepreneurial empowerment. We're not here to recruit Googles or large companies here. We want to empower our local entrepreneurs to start their own companies, grow their companies. We see that important for keeping families and residents here in the county. And then just one last little tidbit on economic development that has broad bipartisan support across Colorado. 68% of all Coloradans support the government backing economic development. A little bit about us, we're a 501c3. We're different than the chamber. I think a lot of people question, what is SEP? How do you compare to the chamber? The chamber is a 501c6. They're a membership-driven organization that does a lot of advocating and policy, so they can go out and essentially lobby. We're here to take in state and federal grants and help dole those out through programming. We're established in 2022. We have a great board. Just want to point out Mark Richards right here, who was in Breckenridge. He's a many-time entrepreneur who is on our board. We have a lot of broad experience here. So overall goals for SEP, we want to boost wages. Economic development is proven to boost wages. We want to create job laddering opportunities. That phrase, job laddering, kind of, I don't know, a little wonky of a phrase. But what it means is the ability to start at the entry level, move up to middle management, and move on to upper management later on. When Vail Resorts kind of moved out of the county in the early aughts, we saw a lot of those middle management, upper management jobs kind of disappear from the county. We want to help kind of create those opportunities again here. And then finally, as I mentioned before, diversify our economy. We want to hedge against the risk of a recession and climate change. The opportunity here is we have a highly educated workforce. I think the highest educated county in the country is Boulder, Colorado, at about 61%, who have college degrees. We have 59% here in the county. And then this unfortunately created this deck last week. And I know there's been a lot in the news about federal grants, but we'll see what happens. But there were a number of grants, federal and local, that were great opportunities for us to go after. Specifically, we last year with seed money, essentially to cover some of our overhead from the county, I think our final number was $410,000 in cash grants and another $110,000 in in-kind donations that we brought into the county through our programming. So we have a lot of supporters, Startup Colorado, CHAFA, DOLA, OEDIT, Summit County, Energize Colorado has been a big supporter, and Excel Energy. I'll keep it short on our programming, but we kind of break them down into 3 pillars, as I like to talk about it. So entrepreneurial development, this is helping people with big ideas get those ideas off the ground. So we put on 2 accelerator programs, one in June and then one in the fall. The one in the fall was in conjunction with Routt County, a first of its kind. So through the grant we got, it had to be tech-only companies. So we had 7 from Summit County, 5 from Routt County. They participated through 6 weeks of programming, another 4 weeks of pitch practice, and it ended in a demo day up in Steamboat, where I think over 100 people attended, including investors, business owners. 2 of the companies right now are going through some fundraising because of that event. So some big opportunities. Retention and expansion. So these are helping existing businesses here who are doing well, but maybe their client base is really only in Summit County. So we put on some consulting for them through the economic gardening program and just one-on-one consulting I'm providing. And that is to help them expand their customer base outside the county. One example is a bagel company looking to expand to the Aspen Valley and Vail Valley. Another is a apparel company that probably many of you know. They needed help to expand their sales nationwide and worldwide. So helping with the logistics around that, we provided a lot of consulting there. And then finally, our moonshot is the 3rd one. So this is industry creation and recruitment. So I like to think of it as what do we know we're good here in Summit County? It's outdoor rec. So what can we focus on that's going to help boost that? We've done a lot of studies. There's a big McKinsey report on how outdoor recreation automation is booming. It's big in Europe. It's not that big here in North America yet. So when I talk about that, it's broad. It's everything from autonomous snowcats to reporting wildfires right away to more efficient snowmaking. We are trying to position Summit County as a leader in that. So we have, as you guys know, 4 world-class resorts here. That's a great place to test out machinery. So it's both recruiting companies to come in here and have Summit County as a base for their testing grounds, but then also helping the entrepreneurs here based in the county boost their technology and build their technology. We would provide some location and the relationships with the resorts here to help that out. But that's a huge opportunity. We know automation is coming. We can either kind of follow or we can lead. And I think there's a great opportunity to lead, and that's going to create a great wage growth and job creation here. Just some of the outputs from some of our programs. I won't bore you guys, but you can kind of look over some of the stats there. Actually, do want to point out one thing. The winner of the grant prize for $5,000 actually lives in Keystone. Aaron Landau, if you guys are familiar with Aaron, his company, Code Beetle, won that prize. They have an online platform that teaches coding to kids. The way they do that is actually teaching coding to teachers, so they can enable that. This is our economic gardening program. One of just big outcomes out of that, a pretty small program, was the 6 participants anticipate another $340,000 in annual revenue from that program. Let's see. I mentioned this before. This was our demo day. 12 tech companies, 6 weeks of programming. It was quite the event, as you can see on the right. It was, it was a great success in my mind and many others. Any questions before I kind of jump into the details on the RTAP grant for Keystone on SEP or mission? Yeah, Carol.
Hi, I remember reading about your pitch to the county commissioners for some seed money. How did you get started? What was the foundation, if I might ask?
Yeah, so going a little far back, so a couple years ago, I started a software company up here called Known. It's a platform and app that helps homeowners maintain their home. We aggregate data from MLS and inspection reports to give people personalized advice. As I was building that company, I noticed there was kind of a void here for entrepreneurial help on that side. But I started getting recruited to Chaffee County. I participated in their accelerator. They probably invested tens of thousands of dollars in me to attend that. I got recruited to Telluride to pitch there and join their accelerator. What I started to notice were a lot of other rural mountain communities were doing a lot of work, and I came back and discussed with my wife. I'm like, why are we doing this here in Summit County? And that's when I learned about Summit Economic Partnership. So Summit's been around Summit Economic Partnership's been around since 2022. Some of the core founders were Commissioner Pogue, was one of our original board members, Dustin Myman. There's some big names who saw the need now while revenues are high to help kind of boost our economic development here in Summit County. We are one of just 375 economic development organizations in the state of Colorado. We're probably the newest. Most counties in the state have at least one economic development organization or more. So it's my brief.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got inspired to join after talking with Jake Rashavi down in Chaffee County. Anything else?
Any questions?
All right. Long-term goals for Keystone, very similar to what I outlined with SEP. We want to create long-term economic viability here in the town. We want to flatten the seasonality of jobs and revenue for companies. We're not talking about quashing it, but keeping those spikes out so a little more predictable here. We want to boost local wages. High demand jobs, whether those are in tech or engineering or anything else, they sustain obviously higher wages, and spending. So those are people who have obviously greater cash flow, who can then spend those on restaurants, and they're doing that year round, not just in peak season. And then build stronger local businesses. Jobs like engineers and lawyers and tech workers, studies are out there that they have a 5x multiplier on the local economy. What that means is for every one of those jobs, they help create 5 additional jobs, whether that's in HVAC or service jobs. So there is this big kind of multiplier effect with those types of jobs. But let's get to Keystone's Main Street grant. So I mentioned OEDIT, so that's the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. They have a grant. They have several grants that are actually Rural Technical Assistance Programs. This is specifically the OREC, which stands for Outdoor Rec. So it's the OEDIT RTAP OREC grant. We applied back in September. So we teamed up with Lindsay, who happens to be my older brother, and not true, but we do spell Hirsch the same way. So I got approached by the lead of that program. Typically, this program is focused on rural cities. I think Rangeley, Leadville has been a participant. Dinosaur's been a participant, where there are rural communities that have the potential. They have a main street, but they don't have an outdoor rec economy yet. So this consulting comes in and helps them build that. Keystone almost has the exact opposite problem. You guys have robust outdoor rec here, but there's not really a main street. And the way the grant's written, it can apply to either. And so I approached Matt Nunez, who's the head of the program, about that and talked about, hey, we have Colorado's newest town here. I kind of gave him the pitch, and he's nodding and nodding. He's like, well, my family's actually had a second home there for 40 years. So he's very familiar with Keystone and very excited about that. So we applied on behalf of Keystone. We got awarded it in, I want to say, September, October, soon after that. The goal of the program is, we're kind of very early in it right now, and I'll get to the timeline on exactly what we've done. But we want to focus it on the importance of Main Street. And it doesn't have to be a physical location, but what is that sort of like mental location? We believe Main Street is where locals meet, where tourists meet, where people share ideas, and it's an important place to congregate year-round. Silverthorne's been working on their Main Street for probably 10, 15 years now because they kind of lacked it. And we thought this is a great opportunity for the town of Keystone, that you guys are 1 year in, or not even, to utilize this free resource.
I'm sorry, say
Yeah.
that part again. Free resource.
Yes, free. We're trying to get the exact numbers, but it's approximately a $40,000 value when we get done with this report. The goal is to create a strategic plan. So we have been assigned 4 graduate students who are at CU and CSU, and they're going to be working on that. We did a self-assessment with our steering committee. I think we ended up close to 32, 40 pages of responses in that. It's still working, but that's just kind of setting the stage right there. We kicked off preliminarily. We just got assigned the student team the other week, but we started in November. It's going to run through April. The main kind of, I'd say, ending is going to be in March, when the team's going to come up here for 2 days for a kind of in-person workshop. They're going to pay for their stay and everything like that, so there's no cost there. But what we see, though, is this is a great supplement to the comprehensive plan you guys are developing right now through SC Group. Here's a quick timeline on where we are. So we had our introduction meeting December 9th. That was with the steering committee. I think we had close to 20 people on that. Lindsay and I worked together to kind of identify different stakeholders, whether those are business owners, the National Forest Service, council members. I'm trying to think. We had representatives from Keystone Policy, Keystone Science School. We tried to Keystone Neighborhood Company. We tried to bring in as many people as we could to get this good comprehensive view. We finished our self-assessment on January 12th, had some great feedback. I think close to 8 people contributed to that document. As I mentioned, we were assigned our student team the other week, and we're kind of waiting to have that kickoff meeting. We wanted to make sure, I think they're ready to start it, but I want to see how this meeting goes before officially announcing that. So I told them I'd get back to them tonight on announcing that. And then we'll have ongoing meetings, stakeholder meetings, to track progress and see how it goes. And then, as I mentioned, the site visit is going to be March 12th and 13th up here. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys now. We'd love to answer what questions you have.
Who are the members of the steering group that are kind of guiding this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have it in a spreadsheet on my computer that I could give you everyone. Lindsay, do you know people come up?
I'm sorry.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to stop presenting and then dive deep into the spreadsheet here.
You can answer later.
Okay.
Yeah, my only concern with it is a steering group that's helping to steer something on the economic development side, which will hopefully feed into the comp plan. Is that truly representative of our community to give you a good input? Because your results are only as good as the inputs you're going to receive.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have a good, diverse segment of the population giving you inputs as you go forward and the students complete their effort?
I'd like to answer yes, but I'd love to back that with data. So I can sit here and read the names that I have on the list in front of me, or I can send them to you. What do you guys prefer?
Read
Read them? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And some of these members may not have realized they were on the steering group until they got an email this week.
Yeah, so these are, I believe these are, so we sent this invite out back in November. Here we go, I'm going to read it down. Michelle Pearl of, yeah, hold on 1 second. Yeah, can you guys, can you see that all right? Or I can make it a little bigger.
It's on rollers, let's just move it to the middle.
To Michelle Pearl, Christine Zanell, Mark Matthews, Shannon Buell.
Who's Christine Zanell?
She works for the Keystone Policy Center.
What?
She works for the Keystone Policy Center.
All right.
We've been trying to get Shannon Bueller or a designee of hers. Tyler Bruce, Carrie Vanderwit.
Who's Tyler Bruce?
I have him down as Keystone Commercial. Lindsay, do you know?
That is, he manages all the commercial spaces owned by Keystone Resort.
So he's a Keystone Resort employee that manages the spaces that the merchants use.
All right, that's correct.
Yeah. Trixie Vandershoff, she was invited, did not attend, but she's the CEO of Common Spirit. I know you guys have an urgent care here. Aaron Landau did not attend, but he is a resident of Keystone. He also owns a couple businesses in Summit County. We have Chevy. I think everyone probably knows Chevy. Sherry Ryan, she's with the Summit Chamber. Tony with A Basin. Amanda Wheelock is with the National Forest Service. We have, is it Scott with Steep? Is he the owner? What did I think of someone?
Justin?
Justin, yeah, Justin attended instead. Dylan McBride, I believe he's with SE Group. Scott Price with Snake River Water District. Carol, you were invited, I believe. Yeah, you did. Olivia Gilmore, I'm actually not sure who Olivia is. Amy Kemp is the head of marketing for Kindred. And Amy was also very involved with kind of entrepreneurial development probably about 5 years ago. Here in Summit County, she owns some shared workspaces and is very passionate about that. Is it Maya?
Who is she head of marketing?
Kindred.
All right, she's the Kindred, right?
Yes. And then it's Maya, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
I would say Maya has been very vocal and contributing a ton on our just kind of a self-assessment. Some of these are state stakeholders that we haven't been able to really pull in, and that's why they're on the secondary list here. And then we have more people that we would invite to workshops but aren't necessarily on the committee. I will say that we are very open to having more people on the steering committee, so this is by no means closed or anything like that. If you have suggestions, please send them to me or contact me right after this meeting.
Any council members interested?
I have a question. What is the objective, if you could refresh us on the steering committee membership? Is it to be business leaders? Is it to be representative of the community?
It's a great question. We basically tried to get a wide swath of representation from the community. I think everybody, whether you put your resident hat on, your business owner hat on, your council person hat on, you're going to have a different perspective. So we tried to get the kind of widest swath of anybody here, whether you're a resident. We even tried to get kind of second homeowners in on this too, because I think they're an important voice. So, you know, is it a perfect analogous, you know, how you break down? No, but we try to get that kind of wide representation.
Councilmember Davis?
I have basically two questions. One is, what do you need from us? And the other is, we as a town council and TAM are about to go through a strategic planning process. How do you see your process fitting in with that process?
So I don't really need, I'm not asking you guys for anything. Mostly I want your blessing. I think that's my main ask. And your involvement. So I want to make sure you guys know who I am, and if you have questions to reach out to me. On the second question there, specifically, how does this RTAP grant feed in, or how does SEP feed into your comprehensive plan?
Well, you're talking about doing a comprehensive plan for Keystone. I'm not really clear which direction your grant goes. Is it primarily for a Main Street or something else? And we've got these two parallel things, you know, our strategic plan, which is not started yet, and you're doing a strategic plan, which appears to be separate. How do these two interact, or how do we see them interacting?
Well, I'll let Lindsay jump in on this.
Gretchen, let me kind of handle that. We have kicked off the comp plan. SE Group, I have weekly meetings with them, and they are just gathering data and information. That's the stage they're in right now, with a lot more public outreach once that base information is gathered. So the way I envision this, when Thayer introduced himself to me is, oh, we're gonna have a comp plan. I would imagine that a portion of the comp plan will be an economic and commercial element of the master plan, of the comp plan. Not to be confused with this small portion that, that Thayer and his group is gonna work on. And I brought in Dylan McBride with SE Group to make sure that he was okay with this. Now, as you recall, as part of the proposal of SE Group, they have different pieces. They have a transportation section, they had an economic analysis section, and they informed me that, you know, with the money that we have, the $200,000 for the comp plan, you know, there'll have to be some compromises here and there. So when Thayer and I met, I'm like, well, this could potentially be a way to supplement the commercial and the business portion of the comp plan. So it is absolutely independent, but with that being said, if some good data comes out of this, I'm going to call it a school project, this project, then we'll certainly, we'll make it available for the decision makers to see if they want to utilize it. So I only saw it as a supplement to a very small portion of the comp plan itself.
I just wanted to know how
Yeah.
they might interact. And I think it's important that there is some interaction between what SE Group is doing and what this group is doing, and I'm glad that you have explored that.
And Dylan is very open to it. And quite frankly, as we were looking at the stakeholders or the people that have been interested, that is not a comprehensive look. Anyone that you offer that you think is missing or an element that's missing, we can plug that in. And quite frankly, from a thinking out of the box, I couldn't think of a better resource than 4 graduate students from CU that are not.
As you don't mistake that, sir.
Both. It's both CU and CCU. Rams and Buffs.
Sorry.
And if I can also interject,
So
the 4 grad students and their university mentors from,
Yes.
from,
To think out of the box and have a fresh perspective of our community. So I only saw pluses. So
I just wanted to know how it was going to work. I don't have an opinion at this point.
Councilmember Fistic.
I think this is a great start. I would like to see the list of participants expanded, because right now, from not my council member perspective, but a resident perspective, it looks like a stockpile of propaganda building business exploitive people in our community rather than actual community members. And I mean, there are a few local business owners who don't live here, but it would be nice to see more local business owners who have actually been here for a long period of time, and not just people who are exploiting the community rather than living in it and adding to it economically. Actually living in the community that they are economically deriving something from.
Yeah, I would love to include them. If you have a list, I'll give you my card after this and we can include them.
And I think my comments are similar. When I look at the list, I see a heavy Vail resort-centric list. And frankly, I'm not sure what value the person who manages the commercial property in River Run Vail has when looking at economic development. I would think someone like a Don McCoy, who actually runs a business in both River Run and Lakeside Village, or one of the merchants, may actually be a better representation of looking at the issues that they face. Similarly, Justin Slezak is good on the steep side from Mountain View Plaza, probably somebody from, not Mountain View, but from the Gateway buildings. We probably need somebody from the Mountain View Plaza side.
Scott Jordan.
Who?
Scott Jordan.
If Scott would be willing to do it, Scott would be perfect. someone from the property management side in Keystone as well, Sky Runs, Summit County Mountain Retreats, or Summit Cove. One of those three to give some diversity of the business community we have, but also with your, particularly the students that are involved in running this. And I have some experience with that, and I'm very supportive of them, of the idea of bringing new ideas and out-of-the-box thinking for us. But I think some of those added folks could add some on-the-ground reality to what the community faces now and where the community ought to be going in the future.
The reason we approached Dow Resorts, the commercial leasing person, is I wanted to know if there was a history. We can go back in some records. What types of businesses are working, what are not, tenure, and some things like that. So that was the reason for that part.
John.
Thanks. I just want to echo, I think that this is awesome, the proactiveness and the ability to really see what Keystone's about. I would also agree with Valerie that early in your presentation you talked about the mid-managers and being able to grow into management, right? And I think that from the list, it seemed like we had the senior folks, right? The folks that were exploiting the community or earning off the community, I'd say. I wouldn't say exploiting is the word I would use, but I think it's missing those chunks of people that are highly educated, that 58% of the community that has a college degree, that experiences it, but might not be able to afford a business, right? Might not be able to own a business. And I think that that's a significant portion that I didn't see on the list that I would love to see some representation. And that is a very hard demographic to get. I understand that, right? But I think that would be really awesome. One question I did have early on was the breakdown of the CSU and CU students. Living up here is a magical experience, right? But if I was not from the mountains, or if I maybe had grown up in Denver in our metropolitan area my whole life, how do we expect those students to really get a grasp of our community when they're coming to visit the end of their, or near the end of their project?
Yeah, so great question. Just going back to your first comment, I want to figure out a way that all of you can contribute suggestions to the steering committee. So I'll come up with a form or a spreadsheet that I can share with the entire council, and we can go from there. I value all that feedback. To your second point, so the way they're working on this is through the self-assessment that we put together. So it was, I think before we started filling out, it was 32 pages long. A lot of questions. Lindsay and I think crossed our eyes a couple times filling that out. But we opened it up to the steering committee to fill that out. And so this is giving them at least an initial understanding of what is going on in the community. And I think there was kind of broad agreement, and these are kind of the general themes, just talking and through that, is Keystone's here. We have a lot of seasonality, right? We have obviously the snow sports, and then it drops off kind of end of April into May, even halfway through June. It's kind of a ghost town here. Things kind of ramp up, and then kind of, again, by the end of August, early September, things are dead again until Keystone races to be one of the first open. But even when they're kind of racing to be the first open, there's not a lot of people here. So from, I would say, the businesses that rely on tourism, they want to understand, hey, what can we do to kind of supplement this? So there's that theme. And then the other theme is, I think, from some of the locals here is like, well, what are opportunities for me? So looking, is that light manufacturing opportunities? If I'm an entrepreneur, is that creating some sort of, centralized place for shared office space where, people can start a company, or remote workers are coming here, but they're surrounded by local restaurants and things like that. That's what the committee or the student team is going to look at with those recommendations. But I think we've brought a lot, and I'm happy to share that self-assessment with you guys. And if you guys want to point out anything we're missing in there, I definitely welcome that feedback.
John, one thing I'd like to add is I had the opportunity to meet all 4 of them online last week. I think it was last week. And I was really sincerely impressed with how much research they've already done, albeit a majority via social media and things like that. But some of the questions I got, they're not going into this cold, and I believe 2 of the 4, if not 3 of the 4, have been to Keystone before to ski and are somewhat familiar. So they're not going in completely cold.
Thank you both.
Any other questions or comments? No, I applaud the effort. I just want to make sure that we get the maximum out of this to support the company. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you guys for your support. Oh,
Would you be willing to send the list of who you have on the steering committee at this point to John so he could distribute it, our town manager, to the council for suggestions? I think there've been a lot of thrown out, and you need a little bit more, you need something more concrete than names thrown out in the middle of the meeting.
yeah, my note taking during the meeting was pretty poor, so I would support that. So yeah, how about this? I will follow up. I have John's email. I'll send him, I'll make the list, clean up the list a little bit, send it to him, where he can distribute, and then give you guys kind of a form to recommend people. That's my email on there. If you have people I should talk to, specifically, I'd be happy to set up a 15, 30-minute meeting to chat with anybody and bring them up to speed, so.
If you Ken, in your case, if you know these people, maybe an email introduction from you before the head of Thayer would probably go, that would add some cachet to this and possibly give them a little energy to want to spend some time on this, which I think would be incredibly valuable.
Lindsay knows many of the people in the community we've talked about.
Yeah, it's just somebody, rather than us coming in and like, hey, you don't know me, but.
I think that discussion probably ought to come from Lindsay to help recruit the folks. I think Lindsay understands the nature of the type of people that the council talk about, and I think maybe getting that list of names, and there may be others. Aaron mentioned Scott Jardon. We have Joe over at Dos Locos. You have an order of Subway sitting down at the end as well, who all experience the year-round pace of life here in Keystone. So
I will be reaching out to supplement our list.
yeah, and if you send it out to us, we can all give names and make it sort of a coherent. Some of those folks I don't have emails for. I know them, I just don't have emails or contact.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you very
introducing
much.
this to us.
All right. Next item is town manager and business licenses.
Okay, so Summit County does not require business licenses. All of the towns in Summit County do require business licenses. Most of them require business licenses. I'm going to repeat some of what's in the memo, but just for those people maybe listening. Generally, you have business licenses for several reasons. Administrative compliance makes it easy for staff to check up on the business, make sure they're following all of the laws, paying taxes if they need to do something like that. If you don't know what businesses are in your town, that can be very difficult. Zoning and code compliance. Our code limits certain types of businesses in certain areas. If they don't come in to get a license, often they'll just set up a business in contravention to the zoning regulations. Consumer protection. There are unscrupulous business people out there, and a business license program does not guarantee that we're going to catch them all, but it's another step. It's if someone shows up at your door and says, do you want to cut me a $10,000 check, I'll put the roof on next week, you can at least call and see if they are truly a business that we know about, or if they're just someone trying to get money out of you, and you'll never see them again. And finally, public health and welfare, especially for our brick and mortar businesses. We can ensure that they're in compliance with just life safety rules, regulations like that. Different businesses have different rules for egress, safety development in the building. We can just have general standards, but unless we know what the business is, we can't really make sure of that. Several types of business licenses, and these are what we're going to want feedback from the board if we do go ahead with the business licensing program. Fixed premise licenses are those businesses that obviously have a physical location. Pretty much enough said there. And then many towns offer a second type of business license. It's called a remote location. Think of a contractor or someone like that who comes into town, does business. We don't have use tax, many towns do. If they're paying taxes or buying products that are going into the town, passing those on, that tax should be a sales tax collected, county sales tax collected on behalf of Keystone. That's what remote location licenses are. And they're for people who come often, not one-offs. There's a third type of license, short-term or vendor license. Those are people, if we have an arts fair, the vendor's licenses will all get these, or have a requirement to get a vendor's license. Often, something like an art fair, it's on the shoulders of the sponsor of the art fair to get the vendor's licenses for the various vendors there. Just another way to check that if someone's doing business in town, selling products in town, we can say, well, this person got a vendor's license, but I don't see a state sales tax return to Keystone. So what's the story there, I guess? And what we're looking for, I'm trying to keep this short here, is do you want us to go ahead with a business license program? The cost is de minimis, probably $50 or less. We're simply looking at the cost of processing covering the cost of processing the license. This is not intended to be a fundraiser for the town, just a way for us to build the correct database we need. So do you want us to go ahead with the program? And if so, do you want us to go with all three fixed premise, remote location, and short-term licenses? And any questions?
Councilmember Davis.
I'd like to know the staff recommendation on this. I'm assuming, since you put it in here, that you are recommending all three types of licenses?
Yes.
So I like the premise of the idea of business licenses and protecting citizens and all that. I'm concerned about the overreach, right? Like growing and expanding this. So I guess my first question is, before we incorporated, did we fall under Summit County's expectations of business licenses?
Summit County did not require business
Okay.
licenses.
And most counties don't require them.
Most counties don't, most municipalities.
So still in unincorporated areas of county, like Summit County, there's no requirement for business licenses?
Correct.
Okay.
There might be for specific types of trades, but.
Sure. And just some very specific questions. So like the vendor licenses, you mentioned that usually falls on the organizers to coordinate, maybe not the cost, but some form of coordination, right?
Yeah.
Is there a sense, would this reduce the incentive to host fairs or community gatherings here? Would that discourage vendors from wanting to come to Keystone?
No, I don't believe so. First of all, the cost, especially for the short-term or vendor licenses, a $20 cost.
Okay.
And anywhere else they go, they're going to most likely encounter this type of regulation.
Okay. Except previously here when it was unincorporated?
Except previous.
Okay. And then like, let's say a mon pod, somebody's mowing a lawn or plowing a driveway. right? But they have to get a license
If they are doing it
in Keystone?
regularly, yes, they would have to get a license. It's a landscape company, and although we don't necessarily tax them, we do if they provided fertilizer for the lawn they're keeping. They should be paying the sales tax on that fertilizer in the town. And those are the type of people who we want that extra level to protect our citizens from a scam like that. Someone who, okay, give us your $500 deposit, we'll be here every other week to mow your yard, and then you never see them again.
Do we have a sense of how often that
I have
happens?
people show up at my door quite often from scrupulous companies.
Okay, and because, and sorry if this is direct, but let's say you lived in Summit Cove, right? Like, you wouldn't be able to now check if that person is a business because there is no business licenses and none.
Correct, the best I could do would be
Okay.
Secretary of State.
Okay, thank you for
Yeah.
answering the myriad of questions, helping me understand this better.
Valerie?
I like the recommendation. I like standards. I don't like over-regulation, but I think it's important to adhere to the other fundamentals that other municipalities are engaging in. I would just add that I hope that lemonade stands are selling hot chocolate from little kids is not going to be used.
No, we are not going to go after lemonade stands. When Lindsay opens one up on Highway 6, we
So recently, we had an event where we invited, or tried to invite as many of the businesses in for the chamber event. And Carol primarily had to guess what businesses are in this town. There's no list, there's no knowledge. And having worked with an HOA and vendors for many years, I think this is something that we need, particularly in times of boom. You will have all sorts of contractors that show up. And whether they are qualified or not this is at least a step in knowing who they are, who's in the town, and I am very much in favor of moving forward.
Carol?
I feel like we're developing a consensus here for each other. I urge that we, as others have said, keep the principle that you proposed in this staff report for a nominal administrative fee that enables to know who is doing what in our town, where they are, and whether sales tax is being collected. Now, to that end, as Gretchen just pointed out, I sat down a year ago and went through the Secretary of State report online. I didn't capture everyone, because I know who's here. So my question, and for when you come back to us, I'd like to know what the process is that we'll find out what businesses are here and make it equitable, so we're not disincentivizing those who are honest. The second point, I wonder if you would contact, or somebody in your staff could contact our neighboring municipalities. They all charge a business license fee, but I see that over the last few years that fee has been going up. So Frisco is going from 75 to 100 this year. Silverthorne, I don't know, I couldn't find it online. Breckenridge, of course, they have always make it
different
complicated, many tiers, but the bottom line for an in-town business is $200 plus $10 per person who works there. Dillon is 60. So my hope is that you can come back to us with a sense of why are they increasing. There may be some staff work that's involved with this that we don't know about, and I'd like to go and let our eyes wide open.
I believe we need to also, I think a business tax is going to be important, not tax, but a business license is going to be important for the community, just so we know who is in the community. I recognize The identification of businesses is going to be a journey, not a point in time, because part of it's going to be an education, not only for the businesses that exist in Keystone and maybe working out of homes, but also for the vendors who are coming into Keystone and performing work. Now, the vendors should know that they're already tapped by the other towns for a business license identification. But that's going to be a challenge, and I know it's going to grow as you go over time. I am concerned about cost. The cost needs to be, as you indicated, minimal. I think Dylan just increased theirs this year to 800. But I too did a research of looking at other towns. I found Breckenridge is ludicrous. It's obviously a money-making operation supporting workforce housing or something else. But in our case, I think it's a very limited scope that we're looking at to get a handle on our businesses, who's doing business here, and also to help the town on the economic development side to try to bring those businesses in as we particularly start developing our vision for the future of the community.
I would love to see if the business case could be made to do this for free. And then the increase in sales revenue, the increase in compliance, would that cover the administrative costs? Like, I would just love to see if that could be explored, because if we can get, we've talked about the fine structure, right? And the goal being compliance, right? So if we can argue that compliance and getting the proper sales channels to us might be a wash for the administrative cost.
I would say in general, make the businesses pay for the administrative work that is being done. And I'd also say that we would probably actually get more compliance if we're charging a fee rather than saying, please fill out this form. To tell the honest truth, they would probably realize this is a requirement more than a request if we're saying you also have to pay this fee to us. But that's just my personal feelings.
Makes sense.
Aaron?
The renewal cost, is there any renewal cost? Or are we thinking it's just a one-time up front, and would there be opportunity to have a lower renewal cost?
There could be. We'll bring the cost to you when I bring the ordinance. It would have to be renewed every year because we have to update that list every year.
So do I have consensus for the council to go ahead and develop I guess it would be an ordinance, a draft ordinance, and then bring it back to the council? All right. Did you get all the guidance you needed?
I sure did.
Next item is discussion of wildlife-proof refuge containers. Is that Mr. Town Manager?
Okay, I will start out by kind of laying out what my thought now on nuisance code is going to be. This is obviously something we need to eat like an elephant, one bite at a time. And we're starting tonight with workshopping wildlife-proof containers. As I was even going through this, I might be a little ambitious with my schedule, but my idea is to bring, start with this wildlife-proof containers, possibly do a first reading next meeting, possibly workshop one more time shortly, workshop noise at our next meeting, general nuisances the following meeting after that, and then the remaining sections in the general provisions in the nuisance ordinance in our March meeting. This might all get pushed out a little bit as we're hashing out the details on the various sections as we go through it. And adopting as quickly as we have consensus on how the ordinance is, on how the various sections go forward. So that's my proposal. Like I said, probably ambitious timeline. But we'll start right now on wildlife refuse containers. After getting some feedback from some of the community, we had some pretty ambitious implementation dates here. April 15th for the acquisition of wildlife-proof containers, and August 1st for the construction of enclosures if they don't have a wildlife-proof container. I'll hear your feedback, but it might be much more practical and palatable to our citizens if instead of those dates ending in 2025, they end in 2026. It's just a thought thrown out there due to construction season, design season, issues like that.
Sorry to backpedal a little bit. Are we, and this might be a question for the town attorney, are we able to adopt certain aspects as we go along? So can we adopt the wildlife-proof container aspect and then add on to the ordinance and just keep like adding on to it? It doesn't need to be fully baked.
Yeah, we can, I should probably then move up to our next meeting instead of noise, even though I've started working on it, the general provision sections, because we can adopt these each individually. However, the enforcement provisions are all in the general provisions. This would enable me to go to someone and say, you can't do that, but that's about it at this point.
And to your point about 2025 versus 2026, I was originally very supportive of a lengthy implementation process due to the cost, but I do value and understand the need to get this fast-tracked and specifically this wildlife-proof aspect, or at least remedies to it implemented sooner rather than later.
Eric?
First, I want to compliment the general schedule that you've laid out to tackle each portion of the nuisance ordinances and things that are going to fall under that umbrella. That makes great sense. Hey, maybe that schedule will work out. That would be amazing. And then I saw some of that feedback as well. I do think that like there's been some messaging out to the community that this is coming. So building off of what John said, there's some really severe problem areas. They need to be fixed, and they don't need to wait till 2026. Because we wait till 2026, it very likely could result in a bear versus car. It very likely could result in a bear versus pet or resident, and it will absolutely result in trash bags being strewn around neighborhoods again. That shouldn't wait. I know it's a push, but it's the responsible thing to do, and it should have already been done. And so I absolutely support keeping a more aggressive time frame on implementation. And I'm quite certain that the residents in areas that are affected by bear trash interactions would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Valerie?
Some feedback that I received from a couple residents in the Limpass Village. They have concerns about the size of their garages and the ability to adhere to some of these policies, given that they feel like their garages and enclosures that they do have on their properties are so limited that they barely fit their cars. They're wondering if bear cans will suffice because they don't have room to put one of those big bear-proof cans in their garage and a car. So I don't know what the workarounds are. I don't know if I'm
I can answer that.
I can answer, sure.
Yeah. So that's my situation is I can, there's no, like most of us who have garages that were not built in like the last 20 years, you know, it says a 2-car garage, but it's really a 1.82 garage. There's no way to put in trash. I've had trash-proof cans outside my house, you know, I'm like right next to Limpass Village, one street over. Yeah, the bears will come by, they'll take one sniff, they might even tip the can over, but they will not mess with it. Mostly because they know there's free tacos around the corner in the Dos Locos dumpster, but they will keep wildlife out.
So we're saying that the bear-proof can suffice. We're not requiring all of these people to keep them contained in sheds.
No. The enclosures only for
Okay.
commercial.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the residential side, if it can't fit in the garage, you buy a bear-proof can. Now it's gonna cost you some money. You buy a bear-proof can and it can be left outside.
One other comment that was, and I'm not advocating or taking a position on this, but one of the issues that was raised in Loveland Pass Village is in relation to the STRs, because they feel like those are the biggest issues and violators of this, because they have renters who don't know when trash day is, they're not opening the bear-proof cans because they're frozen or hard to open, they're putting the wrong receptacles out and or just throwing bags out in the street. So they want to point out that there needs to be some acknowledgement that in their neighborhood in particular, there might need to be more communication with the STR owners regarding how to enforce this.
And when we adopt, if we adopt this, we can update the SDR code to literally require when you apply for your license or renewal, you demonstrate that you are in compliance with this somewhere or another. And there are always going to be issues. There are always going to be problems. There are going to be people who drop their garbage outside someone else's enclosure, issues like that. Enforcement is going to have to, you know, is this a matter of a restaurant propping open a dumpster, or is this a matter of someone dropping off their SDR waste outside the restaurant's dumpster? And we'll have to look at enforcement closely that way.
Richard?
So, do we know how quickly people can get these bear-proof? I'm just worrying that we've got a lot of people that are gonna have to go out at the same time and get them. Is there any difficulty in that?
They should be relatively easy. I'm sure there will be companies that, especially dumpsters, that say you can't do this until whenever. That's where the smaller cans will be easy, the larger dumpsters might not be so much, and that's where the flexibility, if you're an HOA and you're trying to get a bear-proof dumpster and you can show me your email chain, I'm not going to impose a penalty on you when you're trying to get it done and taking the steps necessary to get it done.
So, second question, I read the email from Mark Matthews. I hope you will look at the points he made and incorporate the ones that you feel are appropriate.
Yeah, yes. That was a very good.
I would go one step further and ask you to meet with Mark Matthews and go over those points. I think we have to be concerned about our large businesses and the timelines. I'm also very concerned about HOAs. I think most of them have trash-proof, bear-proof containers already, but if an HOA were to be required to build a container, this summer isn't even a play. I know when Wild Irishman built theirs, they spent about 6 months with the architect going through the architectural plans to build it up. They had to go through the DRB to get approval for it. And then the next summer they were able to implement it. And that was about a $50,000 cost. This isn't for HOAs. This is not a trivial cost. So I'm concerned about the timelines for it, and I would not be in favor of trying to force organizations like that in the near term to have an implementation this summer for something that is not currently budgeted or even in the planning stage. So I'm very concerned about that area of this draft. I'm concerned about the comments that Mark Matthews and KNC made. We haven't received comments yet from Vail Resorts, but I also am sympathetic to the issue of particularly one particular area in Keystone that has clearly a bear problem and has had a significant impact on their community. So if there was a way to somehow tier this to be able to address that very urgent piece in the and perhaps the others that are less urgent.
Well, one thing, I think August 15th of this year would be a good date for containers, to be
Yeah.
container compliant. I think most of our problem areas don't have enclosures, and they're probably not going to contemplate the cost of an enclosure. But they do rely on containers, so if we had an August 15th date for containers and say an August 15th, 2026 for enclosures, that might solve our worst problems right now and give HOAs and other companies opportunity to.
Some of the HOAs that aren't compliant, it may not be a container issue. You know, it's a
Yeah.
building issue, it's that building's gonna require some major modifications to meet the requirements. Although, like I said, I don't know how many are in that category, and I believe most of them, many years ago, went through and solved, addressed that problem, because it was a problem for the HOA, and the owners in that HOA, and so the HOA stood up and did it.
But if we, containers this year, they can get them from their providers, and,
They may not have room for them.
well, where do they keep their trash now?
Well, they may have a building that doesn't meet all the standards. And so that's.
Well, then they would need to get the dumpster that,
I think we need feedback from the HOA.
but if they have a dumpster now, then they could have a bear-proof dumpster.
If it's the same size, the answer is
Yeah.
yes. If it's not the same size, for instance, my HOA, although it's in an enclosed building, has a dumpster that would be in its location, that'd be very difficult to put in, I imagine, a bear-proof.
They're not bigger, they're the same size because they still slide on the front of the machines.
Depends on the position in the bill. I'm just concerned about that we don't have enough input from the community of what the impacts are.
I think on the bear-proof dumpsters that I've seen, it's a mechanism on the open and closed system that's the change, otherwise they're identical.
Not necessarily, for instance, open and closed, of the way the draft reads right now, a garage door that opens, it doesn't have an automatic closer on it, so it wouldn't be compliant. Those garage doors have never created a problem in those communities because they are closed, but manually, as they go in.
Yeah, and I agree, there are a few minor tweaks I need to make on that, like Mark identified, but if you have a dumpster now, you can get a bear-proof dumpster and it will fit where your dumpster fits. If you want to do a new enclosure, you clearly need more time to build an enclosure.
I just believe we need some input.
Yeah, I think just building on those comments, that it sounds like the proposal was like bridging with some bear-proof dumpsters until you could give people time to modify their enclosures. And I totally agree on the point that like, you could put a nuance under like the auto-closing mechanism for a bay door doesn't need to be, but if it's a swinging door, then maybe that needs it, because that's where we usually saw like, a tourist goes out to the dumpster, throws it in, and they leave the door unlatched. But if it had a simple spring closure mechanism, then you solve your entry problem.
Richard?
One thing to think about, because it happens at my place all the time, is while the same, and I don't know what they look like, and I don't, but while you can fit the same, you may be able to fit the same dumpster in, my HOA can't go any smaller. Because we got a lot of people throwing a lot of trash. So we have buildings, we have, but that's something, and we're gonna have to look at, but going smaller would not be an option for us. I have 144 units.
And I would also posit.
Putting on my other hat.
I would also posit that most of those HOAs right now don't have a significant bear problem. And I'm talking about those on the south side of US 6. They don't have a significant problem. We haven't, I know in our area, we haven't seen bear issues in years. We do have an issue with folks who are not part of the HOA just dropping trash in front of the enclosure because it's locked. And it's going to remain locked because of the cost impact of half of Soda Ridge Road and Wild Irishman Road choosing, we're the closest dumpster to the road. So we're the ones that when we locked it, we started, daily we pick up the bags, but it's the small animals and other stuff that get in and make the mess that then we come in and clean up. So I want to make sure this has a good look at the ramifications, and I'm not sure I understand whether we have them or not.
If we tried to identify, to justify having different rules for different areas, we would have to have a scientific study identifying this is bear habitat, this is not.
And I'm talking near term, not long term.
Yeah.
So that's what my problem is with, as you look at different areas. Yeah, we have a significant problem in one area here. In other areas, it's not necessarily as significant an issue. And how do we, with the potential cost ramification, how do we homogenize? It may be an opportunity to reach out to the Owners Association and see if they have, if they can contact their owners, see if there's an issue. If there's no issue, I'm happy.
Well, I mean, 2 years ago, I saw mom and two cubs up Keystone Gulch.
Oh, but
bears are all over.
They're there, but
Yeah.
we haven't had the bears in the dumpster issue.
Yeah.
We've had in other areas. Carol?
We seem to have a lot of tension here. There's those who are eager to get something in place before the bears come out after it. Yes. I don't know the solution. I understand that it makes sense to get a better sense of what the problem will be for HOAs. And maybe that will only address the question of the enclosures as opposed to the individual bear-proof containers. Maybe you can work that out. But my biggest concern is how are we going to get this information about this policy to everyone, especially in a timely manner as we move forward. And you don't have to answer me, but I hope there is some way to make sure it's equitable, that everybody gets the word. It cannot just go through KOA. That's not going to do it. And it cannot go through only our email, which I think is a great process, but it's not everybody. So please take a look at that.
Yeah. And, you know, actually I was just thinking, Lindsay was pulling up small bear-proof containers on his computer. If we implement this, and if we then make a requirement for SDRs, it could probably go a long way to alleviating the problem of people dumping their trash at dumpsters, because if you have an SDR, you will have to have a refuse container of some sort or another. It then becomes a requirement of that. So
the real problem is second homeowners who are not renting their property, who don't want to pay for trash weekly because they're not here weekly, and in high peak periods, they're out taking it to the closest HOA.
Just an anecdote on that. I spoke to someone who fit that exact profile and said, you know, they're going to put cameras up at that dumpster. All of a sudden, there were trash cans and he was getting trash service at his house, so it's a miracle.
What a great idea.
yeah,
It's cameras don't help. Because the key is, the only thing you can do is charge them with trespassing and theft of services. And that just doesn't happen. And so effectively, there's no external enforcement. Having been through someone who experiences this problem, this experience for years. John?
I would just say generally, I've been adverse to the timeline of this, but like after doing a lot of research, and as Lindsay's doing right now, it's relatively easy to procure these bear-proof containers, especially for residential. You can even go on Amazon and get latches that work, and would suffice according to the code. What I view this as is honestly more of an adverse reaction to change, and it seems like it's more about the container than the enclosure goes into, and it's more about changing the behavior of, a lot of containers are bear-proof, right? I think the town manager mentioned one we have outside of town hall is bear-proof, and it looks like a normal refuse container to me. And it's more about changing the behavior, latching it, making sure it's secured, than it is really about the financial burden of the actual act. And that's what it boils down to me is like the communication, the small cost, or relatively small cost, but the communication and changing that behavior is honestly what I see more of the issue as.
I guess I disagree with you. I think it's a combination. One, there's a behavior issue, but when you're dealing with large dumpsters in the location and the approval to put it there, because you can't just necessarily put something outside that hasn't been there before without a DRB approval, because it impacts the architectural integrity. All that gets into the piece that we've got to be from an implementation standpoint, and that's why I was trying to look at, is there a way that we could do it, or a way that we could put the dumpster requirement in that you're talking about, that's bear-proof for the large commercial dumpsters, and then deal with the guys who may have a budgeting problem and a time, so they have time before we get budgeted.
I guess I'm confused. Are we talking about people who have garbage service at this time?
Yeah.
So if they have a dumpster or a garbage can, that can be a bear-proof dumpster.
So I don't care about the garbage cans are easy.
Yeah.
It's the dumpsters and the potential of how those dumpsters were laid out. I just want to make sure we're not putting something in place that suddenly immediately has HOAs in a position that
it's the same footprint.
It may or may. I just want to make sure that it really is, and we're not creating a major financial problem for our larger communities as we implement it. I would love to have this implemented immediately. I just want to make sure that there's a path that we can implement and take care of the big commercial side, because that appears to be where our problem really is, more so than the community association side. And I don't know if there's a way that we could say, all right, for this year on the commercial side, you have to do this and then implement the residential side next year, or transition into the residential side. Aaron.
One more thought on that, on the commercial bear-proof dumpsters. I would be concerned in two aspects there. One, that we would leave that as a stopping or an endpoint that people would arrive at instead of doing enclosures. That's my primary concern, and there's twofold to that concern. One, you create non-compliance with those because the metal actuators and systems are more complex, time-consuming, and heavy, and when you have a server who's cleaning up a restaurant coming out at 2 a.m. And they may decide that the easiest thing to do is simply prop that open, or put the bag next to it because they're tired. You already see some of that propping happening. And two, that you'll end up creating a separate nuisance because slamming metal enclosures can be really loud. In fact, plastic ones, I can tell you personally, are pretty loud already. So I'd hate to see that be the end point or the acceptable alternative to enclosures. Because it's just, you want to make the easiest thing for people to do the thing that you want them to do.
Might I offer a friendly, based on what I'm hearing, maybe we, as an exception, allow, if there is a plan to build an enclosure, they can have an extension to the deadline. But if there is no plan and no evidence of a plan, then the expectation is August 1st, or whatever that date is. But as an alternative, as a one-time beginning of it. I don't know what the dates are, but just an idea.
That makes very good sense. Timeline, we've dealt with timeline requirements for containers and enclosures. And obviously, as I said, I'll sit down with Mark. He had some really great thoughts and a few little tweaks that we need to make on how we define enclosures and things like that.
And how you handle events, and how you handle trash compactors, daytime, nighttime, there may be some differences.
Penalties, violations and penalties. I've written into this penalty assessment, 3-tiered penalty assessment, 2 fines, and then it's a misdemeanor and you go to court and the judge gets to tell you what you're paying. Obviously, this enforcement is going to be an issue because there's going to be a lot of problems that are in no way caused by the owners of the containers. We have people who dump trash where they can, and there will be issues. Enforcement is going to be, it can't be strict compliance. It has to be a nuance, you know. Yes, the Ravens got into the trash at your dumpster. Was it your trash? Why was the trash outside of the dumpster? Was it because the owner lost their key to the dumpster? There's all sorts of fuzzy gray areas in enforcing a trash, well, enforcing pretty much any law, to tell the truth, but enforcing a trash ordinance. So that being said, we clearly have to have some sort of penalties, and I'm interested in your thoughts.
John?
I think it should really go to the malice of it, right? Like, for example, my apartment management company knowingly has a faulty lock on an enclosure, and the lock is preventing me from going inside and throwing my waste. That's malice. Versus a second homeowner comes and hucks their garbage outside, but the lock is functioning perfectly fine. I don't think that's malice. And those are just 2 very specific examples, but I think the penalty assessment should really be focused on the malice of it. Like, is it purposeful? Is it preventable? Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Other thoughts?
That sounds like a discretion item.
Yeah.
We can't know that.
I would expect the town manager to have that discretion and then enforce it. Gretchen?
I was going to say the same thing.
Carol?
I would like to see the first fine very, very low. I don't have complete confidence that we're going to get the word to everyone. And so the first time they're fined could be the first time they're aware of that.
And actually, I kind of misspoke. It's a 4-tier because the first situation is just a notice of violation with no fine associated whatsoever.
I don't think the communication seems like rocket science. I mean, most of these people have trash services, and we could partner with the trash services who provide regular communications to their customers that this is a new policy, and I think it's incumbent on us to partner with the trash removal services to enhance communication. I don't think that the communication issue should give people an excuse to be idiots with their trash.
Not talking about an excuse, but you know, with all the second homeowners we have, it's harder to make sure that they get the word. They pay their bills. And I don't know about you, but I don't read my bill. I look at the number and I feel, right.
Maybe it's a special communication, but I mean, not reading your email communications should not be an excuse for non-compliance, especially for second homeowners.
But we don't have everybody's emails, that's my only
The trash companies who pay the bill, the people who pay the bills and employ them to pick up the trash do.
Perhaps the staff could make a call to a couple of them and see if they would be able to do that.
Yeah, we'll do what we can, but as you said, I don't even see my trash bill that's taken out quarterly. But we can do, yes, we will do whatever we can. People are still going to claim they didn't hear anything about it.
But
Yeah.
But that's what the notice is.
Yeah.
Aaron?
I mean, this is a public safety thing. 3D is a public safety or engineer, educate, enforce. So what we're doing the engineering right now and asking people to do engineering. We'll educate about it and then we enforce. So I'm relieved to hear that there's also a notice before the finding structure. So everyone's going to get that notice if they're out of compliance before they start seeing fines. And with that in mind, I'm willing to accept the idea that first fine ought to have some feeling behind it to create deterrence. Because they'll already have received education and a notice before we get to the fine. And there'll be discretion around it.
Any hard ideas on numbers for first and second?
I agree with Aaron's point, by the way, on the hard hidden.
Are there any precedents from other municipalities? I mean, I've tried to Google it and it brings up commercial penalties and all sorts of things, but I don't even know what a reasonable fine schedule would be for something like this.
They're all over the place.
What did the county do? Is they just implemented something similar to this?
I didn't see what their fine level was. They implemented that incredibly crazy pay-as-you-throw program. Very
But they've also
Yeah.
implemented the bear-proof container program.
So I'll get some numbers when I bring it next time.
Anything else? You have everything you need?
I believe I do.
All right. Now, let's get to know our new finance director with an update on the lodging tax collection. First, I'll turn it over to the town manager.
And I will introduce Heike Fox, our new finance director, who I have kept up late at night lately dealing with this issue of collecting our lodging tax. And it's very much still a work in project, work in progress. There we go. It's very much a work in progress. But Heike's getting there. We'll have something done in the next couple of days. We're sending out frequently asked questions sheet along with their first form to fill out for their January collections, which are due February 20th. And I'll pass it on to Heike and let her introduce herself a bit and explain what she's been doing with this program.
All right, well, thank you, John. Yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to sleep again. So Heike Fox, Finance Director, recently hired. My first task is to get this lodging tax up and running so people can remit their taxes. It's definitely been a journey. And I gotta say, I really appreciate all the feedback that I have gotten. I have talked to more people in the last week and a half than I think I've talked to in the last year. So I've talked to STR owners, I've talked to lodging manager companies, I've talked to the county, all the municipalities in this county, emailed back and forth with legal, and actually had a phone conversation with Airbnb yesterday. So I've got some good news is that this week, tomorrow we should actually send out communications to all the property managers and the STR owners with the form, the frequently asked questions, and an annual form that we're going to have them fill out, which will let us know if they've designated somebody like a lodging, like a property manager company, or if they're using Airbnb or VRBO exclusively, so we know that they're remitting the taxes on their behalf. And then if they're renting on their own, then they will have to fill out that tax return form monthly, even if they don't have any activity. And they'll just have a zero tax return form that says they didn't have any activity for that month, if that is the case. So there's been some challenges, of course, with all of that being said. VRBO and Airbnb both did not discontinue the lodging tax for Summit County. for the last 6 months. So they're continuing to collect that and to remit that to the Department of Revenue, and the Department of Revenue is remitting that to the county. I have been in contact with the Department of Revenue, and also my phone conversation with Airbnb yesterday. They're going to try to come up with a resolution for the STR owners on that, and then I'll communicate that as I get information. It's not really part of our lodging tax concern, but I'm fine being a communication piece just to get that ball rolling between the Department of Revenue, VRBO, and Airbnb. And then once they get that solidified, the owners can take that over and figure out how they can get the refunds for their customers for that. The other piece is that Airbnb will not update their taxes in their system until February 1st. So they're not going to collect Keystone lodging tax until February 1st. So they haven't collected any January taxes and will not be remitting them to us as of now. They are working on a resolution for that, and I should hopefully know that by the end of this week on what they're going to do, if they're just going to remit it on behalf of the owner, or if they're going to say, hey, we didn't do it, it's up to the owner to remit it to you. So that's the other piece that I'll be finding out. But other than that, everything is up and running and will be sent out this week for everybody to fill out their tax return, remit their taxes by February 20th. We did do a new email, so all the communications for STR, whether it's tax related or licensing related, it'll be str@keystoneco.gov. And that way all those emails go one place. I'll respond to the tax questions, Maddie. I'll respond to the licensing questions. Any questions? Okay,
Questions?
I do want to point out that Maddie and Heike are also putting together a little webinar which will be posted so people can literally watch the process of getting the license and filling out a form.
Yeah, the educational piece will just, it'll just be it'll just be tax related, just how to fill out the tax form. The tax form is pretty simple. It's just gross revenues, and then any additions if they collected more money, and then any subtractions if they had any bad debt or anything that they can't collect on, and then they just multiply it by your tax rate, and that's what they remit. So it'll be pretty easy, but we're going to do the webinar just to make people feel at ease with going through the process.
Other questions? John?
Well, first of all, welcome, and that was very detailed, so thank you. For the January 1st to February 1st, specifically from Airbnb, did you get a sense on how that was? Do you think that Airbnb is going to play ball, or do you think the owners of the units are really going to be the ones that are going to have to do this?
I fully believe that Airbnb will step up to the plate and make this right, especially because they're the ones who are in the wrong, and that's the right thing for them to do. So I believe that they're going to make it good. I haven't got that actual communication that is the case. It's a big corporation company, so it's not one person that can make that call. So I'm hoping that they can make that call pretty quickly so we know how that's going to affect everybody.
Thank you.
Other comments? Carol?
Maybe I'm just slow here tonight because I haven't had dinner yet. Do I understand that Airbnb and VRBO continue to collect the 2% lodging up to the end of calendar 2024 and send it to the state?
That's correct, yes.
And you are now going to track what happened to that money?
Well, the money obviously is in the hands of, because it gets submitted to the Department of Revenue, and then it goes to Summit County. So Summit County has received those funds. What I'm trying to do is facilitate communication between the two companies, Airbnb and VRBO, and the Department of Revenue, so they can come up with a resolution for the people who were improperly taxed.
Okay, part two of this is they did stop at the end of 2024 and did not collect the taxes due to us as of January.
That is Airbnb. Airbnb won't have their system updated for collection until February 1st. So we're just trying to figure out how we are going to get our taxes that were supposed to be collected.
Okay, thank you.
Valerie?
Just to clarify though, for those listening, what I'm hearing is this is not the town of Keystone's liability regarding the errant taxes that were collected. Keystone is not in possession of those funds that were collected, and you are going above and beyond by facilitating that communication to try to represent the stakeholders in Keystone to try to help resolve this. But they should know that we don't have the money and this is not our liability. So I thank you for going above and beyond because I know this is frustrating, but I think it's been hard to communicate that this is not a town issue.
Correct, and thank you, Valerie, for that. Well said. Yes, this is not a town of Keystone issue. I'm just trying to facilitate the communication, and then I'm stepping back, and because unfortunately, the owners haven't gotten any resolution, and it is hard to contact the Department of Revenue, and I do have that contact, so hopefully we'll be good. And then as far as the January taxes, for Airbnb, it is all the tax collection and remittance, whether you use a marketplace facilitator, a property manager, or you remit on yourself, it is the responsibility of the STR owner to make sure that those are complied. We don't have any agreements with the property managers; those are on the owners. So that's the other thing that owners are kind of confused about. They think it's our responsibility, and it's not.
Is that point on our frequently asked questions page at the top?
It's definitely in there, yes. Okay. Yeah, and the frequently asked questions, with all the people contacting me, that's just been a huge help in putting that together, to get everybody educated on the process and what's factual and what's true, and what we're doing. So that'll be updated time to time based on, if those questions change or if situations get resolved. The other confusion that people are having is that they're not understanding that the Summit County tax was discontinued and our new tax is just replacing that Summit County tax, so it's not an additional tax. The tax rate is still the 8.375. So some people are confused about that and think that we're doing an additional 2% on top of the Summit County tax. So that's in the frequently asked questions as well.
Other questions? Thank you very much and welcome. I know John is particularly happy to have you on board, and I'm not sure how he would be handling this issue right now, our current staff. So, again, welcome.
I would be hiding under my desk and you would be wondering where I'm at right now.
And Maddie has been a tremendous help. I mean, I've just been asking her so many questions, and she holds a lot of pieces of information, so it's been a pleasure working with her. It's been a pleasure working with John again, and John's actually the one who got me the Airbnb contact, which was absolutely brilliant, so thank you for that.
We went through their lobbyists to finally get them to respond.
All right, the next item is short-term rental enforcement, and with that, I'll turn it over to the town manager and town clerk.
And I will pass this right on to our town clerk, Madison.
Good afternoon, town council and mayor. I went into a lot of detail in the update for the work session and the written part, so I'm happy to kind of just provide an overview this evening so that you can ask any questions that you've got, because I know we're a little short on time. I did want to give one update to the numbers. As of right now, we have 1,885 registered short-term rental licenses. So that number has been going up and down a lot over the last week or two as we've kind of done some more enforcement efforts, as well as communicating with people about lodging taxes, has kind of gotten their attention to let us know if they have sold their properties since the renewal period in September. Overall, things are going well with the hotline and the implementation of the short-term rental licensing. One issue that we discovered throughout this process was with address inconsistencies in the town of Keystone, and that was a little bit unexpected and not something that I anticipated when we took on this project. Summit County didn't necessarily experience problems with this from their perspective, but I think that those problems just weren't being tracked because the addresses were not aligned with each other. So there are certain buildings in Keystone, and I think one good example that a lot of people are familiar with is the Gateway building, where the legal address numbers are going to be like 101, 102, 103, and the addresses on the door are 50, 50, 50, 51, and they're also not numbered in a way that would make it very logically correspond with 101 is 5001 and 5002 is 102. So I believe that when we received the information from Summit County in the past about the short-term rental hotline, the reason that the calls were so low is because there are several addresses in Keystone that are not able to be found very easily when you look them up as a hotline agent from a remote hotline that doesn't operate within Keystone. Even if I receive complaints, I won't immediately know what that unit number translates to without looking into it and knowing that that building is different. So addressing these address inconsistencies is a big push for us right now in figuring out how to get charts of what those addresses are between the two buildings. And we're working on adding 2 data fields to all of our data so that when the hotline agents at Deckard are looking up these complaints, they can just get what the condo or subdivision name is and then the unit number that is posted on the door. So we're trying to get as comprehensive of a list as we can now, but in renewals moving forward, we're also going to ask people for that information when they renew their licenses. And hopefully we can also pass this information along to the Summit County GIS team and subsequently Summit County Emergency Communications, just so the community as a whole can benefit from people being able to find where units are and what units people are talking about when they call emergency services or when they're looking things up in the assessor's data. So that has been the primary implementation difficulty and has led to some concerns. But I think that we've got a solution for that moving forward. I did provide kind of some overview of what feedback we've received from the hotline. Overall, I think that people have had good experiences with the hotline agents and haven't even necessarily realized that this is a problem. And we've done some back-end work on the staff part to be able to follow up as staff after complaints are received and not being able to be identified. The biggest thing is that when responsible agents are being reached out to, they are responding to these complaints and they are getting those return phone calls back into us. There are some other questions about enforcement that will be important to talk about if we talk about revising the STR code, but I think that is probably something to consider down the line when we do the short-term rental commission or advisory board, whatever that ends up looking like. So I've provided some overview of what the comments and complaints that we have received, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Questions? Carol?
Nope, I'm giving her a okay sign. Thank you.
Valerie, do you have something?
Your report was so well done. I mean, I was writing down questions as I was reading it, and in the next paragraph you were answering them. So thank you for being so incredibly conscientious. Thank you.
The comments? John?
I would agree with what Valerie said. My only question, the 2 examples that you provided in the report, I believe it was Lenaway and the Sanctuary Keystone, and how those HOAs provided information for residents. Is this something that would be possible to scale up or provide like a frequently asked question or one pager that maybe other HOAs could utilize to ensure that more people are made aware of that?
Yes, and then we're also working on developing kind of just signage that they can print out and make available for people. And the Lenawee president indicated that he has, I believe he's on the communications board of KOA, so he has said that he would pass that around to other HOAs as well.
Amazing, thank you.
Good question. And again, I've echoed this personally to you, but publicly, you've done a marvelous job as you've gone through here. We inherited a can of worms from Summit County with the database and the inaccuracies in the database, and you're addressing those and as we go forward. And I look forward to us getting that short-term rental advisory committee up and operating. I would imagine probably the time period it needs to be towards the end of the major season, so that we have a season of experience, and we need to make sure we have wide participation opportunities for that committee. So again, thank you very much. It's now 4 minutes after 6. We have one item left on item on the agenda is discussion of the retreat. What I would propose is, I would imagine, since I see a flame out there, the food is here, that we take a recess, get our food, and perhaps a little bit more time. How long do you think the retreat discussion will take?
Oh, could be very short or not. So we did not get a consensus statement. But it's, we have to decide what we're going to do going forward. It shouldn't take that long.
15 minutes?
10 minutes maybe.
Right, then how about us coming back together at 7:45? And, 6:40, yeah, 6:45. And completing the item. That's acceptable to everybody?
Works for me.
All right, and I will call us back into order. And the last subject, real subject on the agenda was the council retreat, and I'll turn that over to the town manager.
Okay, so just a quick summary. Your retreat, basically, we sit down for a day, and it's kind of 3 parts. Talk about where we've been, where we're at, and here, especially as a new town, we talk about there are some things that it really doesn't matter what the input is, they need to get done. They're just part of setting up the town. But laying out those issues that staff will be working on. And then the third part, which is what the retreat's all about, is what are the council's priorities? What do you want us to see? We have much more than a basket worth of projects to do. And what does the council want to see in the basket for the next year, 2, 5 years? It informs the strategic plan. It's informed by the strategic plan once we have it, but it's really just a discussion among us. It's an open meeting, but we don't meet here. We'll meet in another town in a room somewhere, get lunch brought in. We're talking a good 6-hour day, not at least a 6-hour day. We sent out a doodle poll. The early February's actually got knocked out because our facilitator is going to be John Stabney from Northwest Cog, and he is out of town till February 16th. He had a family emergency that he had to go deal with. So it got tough. We didn't have a single day in the doodle poll that worked for everyone. It looks like March 20th, which is a Thursday, would work for people, but I need feedback.
Your thoughts? Aaron?
A full weekday in the middle of ski season is a big ask, especially for those of us who work full time. mud season would certainly be better. I know that pushes it back.
Yeah, but the problem with going further out, this is part of it's to lay out our priorities for this year. The further you push it out, we don't have direction of where we're headed for the rest of the year. That's what my concern is. Most towns run these in January. And I think, I'm trying to remember which of the, Frisco, I think, is running theirs at the end of this month, for instance. Talked to their mayor last week. The intent is to show direction, give us direction and the staff direction of things that they ought to be working on. That's what the concern with going into April. The further out we go, it gets tougher and tougher. John?
If we're already talking, like, I completely agree with what Ken just said, but if we're already talking about March 20th, what would April 7th be, or midway through April, when some of the resorts start to wind down and we start to get into that beginning of mud season? Would that be a huge difference?
And if we went on a April to April calendar, I mean, if we're trying to do this in January, you're gonna run into this every year, where it's like, it's the busiest season. And you're like, you want a full weekday.
Well, then let's do it on a weekend. Not this year, but in future years, then perhaps the answer is you can't do it a weekday, to go on a weekend.
And to tell the truth, kinda, I think January is too early.
Yeah.
Because we just spent the months of October and November discussing priorities as part of the budget process.
What are your thoughts when we should do this, John?
You know, when did I do them up in Grand Lake, Heike? I would do them beginning of summer, I think.
I think for the most part, they were like in April, and then if it didn't happen in April, it was September, October.
Yeah.
That's not really state of progress for the next year through September.
No, but April, I'm actually kind of a fan of April because it allows us to work towards this year and it allows us to budget for.
Start looking at next year?
Yeah.
And once we're on a schedule, then it doesn't really push anything back, right?
Yeah.
I'm indifferent with enough notice.
Yeah, I'd like to make whatever decision we do on schedules at the meeting, not tonight.
Yeah.
I also want Dan here for that.
Yeah.
And get his thoughts. But, yeah, I'm happy. I think we just need to do this.
So I'm going to, I'll send out a new doodle poll with April dates.
Do we know our dates well enough to be able to identify a date now, like the first week of April?
Well, we need Dan involved in that too. So.
Right now, though, Dan doesn't have he hasn't scheduled any absences. So, what we could do is come up with a tentative date and then just verify with Dan. And that helps put some finality to this so we can go forward. Because you've also got to check with Stabby if he's available.
Yeah. What days would you guys think?
John?
Just throwing it out there, the week of the 14th, one of those days, I'm really indifferent to it, but I'm just putting out after when Keystone might be closed. So 14, 15, 16, 17.
When is it closing this year?
It's never official, but according to previous years,
when is scheduled close?
April 11th or thereabouts.
They normally tied it to Easter. So it was April 11th of Easter. This last year was early because of Easter. The question is, will this year be late because of Easter?
I don't know when Easter is.
We have,
Easter is April 20th.
John, I'm with you, I would go at least a week after their planned closing, because you've never, I mean, so far this has been pretty amazing snow year.
see, that may run us into May.
Yeah, because spring break in Summit County is the week of April 21st, so I won't be in the country.
And typically, they won't run this month of May because they shift all the operations to Brett.
Yeah, they need
for
to see
economics.
So the week between the 14th and the 18th
Yeah.
is a non-council meeting week.
How about this, you schedule them on Thursdays, how about the 17th? Which is a Thursday.
I can do that.
Yeah. And I will just email out and double check with
Double
everyone.
check with everyone else so they can do it, and we have a tentative date.
And we're thinking like 8, 9, what time?
Starting at 9 would be slightly better, because I have some morning meetings since it is.
Yeah,
work
9,
day.
that way if there's any issues here, I can deal with it.
Yeah, 9 to 4.
Yeah,
Even when I'm on PTO, I still have responsibilities.
I will reach out to John, make sure that works with him. I would guess it would.
Yeah, and then the previous week, there's an I-70 coalition meeting. On the 3rd, there's the morning of mayor managers,
So 9 to 5?
9 to
9 to 4, 9 to 5, yeah.
And yeah, as Sharon said, once we're on it, once we start doing it, as long as we're consistent when we do it,
We can, yeah, but we can make that final decision then.
yeah,
We're anticipating day trip, right, not having to.
day trip, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you confirm a list of those of us signed up for the cast for that this week?
Yes,
Are you getting the invoices directly on that?
yes.
Ah, all right.
Did I make the cut? I signed up.
Oops, I haven't checked.
I was gonna show up and I can't.
Show up. and-
Show up?
Show up.
They're not gonna show you up.
Yeah, show up.
Okay, well, I signed up, I promise.
We'll bring peanut butter sandwiches to the.
Yeah, even if you didn't sign up, show up.
I
They're gonna be
totally did,
Fine.
Yeah.
but not for this.
He's talking about
Yeah, my
cast.
husband.
I signed up for the ski day, I just have a Keystone passes.
Oh, here's that.
Okay, so we're good. That's it, we have 5 minutes to spare.
Have 5 minutes to spare. Want to take a brief break before we go in?
I'll use the restroom.
All right. We're, with no other business, the meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene at 7 o'clock for our council meeting.
You want phone number?
Yeah, can you